Hello everyone, welcome to another Flutter tutorial. In this video we will learn how to use Bloc with HTTP package. We will be calling a web service using HTTP and use Flutter Bloc to update the UI based on the response from the server. Let's begin with a Flutter app that has an empty container as the home with a white background. We will start by adding the required packages to the pubspec.yaml file. We will need Flutter Bloc, HTTP and Equatable packages for this demo. Here the Equatable package is to compare objects in Dart. Make sure to call Flutter packages get to install the package. Once is it complete, we will start creating the basic folders needed for our app. We will need the folder Bloc, Model, Repo, Screens and Widgets. We will fetch a fake JSON API for this demo. For that, head on to jsonplaceholder.typicode.com. We are going to use the user's endpoint, which is https://jsonplaceholder.typicode.com/users. The user's endpoint will return a response similar to this containing list of 10 fake user records. We will copy the URL to a constants file inside the utils folder and call it users URL. Now we will need the model classes for the response from the API. To create model class automatically from the response, go to app.quickttype.io and paste your JSON response on the left side. Give a name for your model. Then select Dart language from the drop-down. We can select null safety and make all properties final from the options here. Now copy the code. Create a new model class named users.dart and paste the code into it. You can see it auto-generates two convenience methods to parse from JSON and to JSON objects. It will be useful for us when parsing data from the service. Now let's write the service class and implement the method to fetch the data from the fake service. Create class user repo and write a method getUsers. This will be an async function. Use HTTP GET to fetch the data from the service. If response status code is 200, we will call the generated method inside the model, which is user_from_JSON method, and pass in the response body to parse the response into a list of user models. Otherwise, throw an exception with the error message. Make the return type of our method to future list of users. Now we have our service implementation complete. Next we will start with the Bloc implementation. For this, we will need 3 files. Let's create those. First one is user_block.dart, second one is user_event.dart, and third one is user_state.dart. If you have followed my previous tutorial on Cubit versus Bloc, you will understand how Bloc works. We will begin implementing with the user events class. The base class user event is going to be an immutable abstract class, and all other events will be extending this base class. You will understand why we are doing this in a short while. The user events class extends Equatable class. We are extending Equatable class to compare two objects, here two event objects. If both are same, Bloc will not refresh the UI multiple times, which will improve performance of our application. For this tutorial, we will have only one event, which is load user event, which will extend user event, then override the props method to return an empty array. Next we will implement user state similarly. The class will be named userState, which is also an immutable abstract class. Events and states can have member variables just like any other normal class depending upon your requirement. Here our different user states will have different member state variables. We need three states. First one is user loading state, which is the state when the user data is loading from the service. The second one is the user loaded state, which is the state after the data is loaded. The user loaded state will have a member variable list of users to hold the data from the response and supply it to the UI as part of the UI. But don't worry, you will understand when we apply it. The third one is the error state. It can be any type of error, HTTP error, parsing error, or any other type of errors. You can extend this example according to your convenience. But to keep things simple, we will have only one error state, user error, which will hold only the error message for the UI. Next we will write the main user block class. Switch to user_block.dart and create a class named userBlock which extends block and have two type parameters, user event and user state. A constructor is needed for block with an initial state. So let's add that. Here the initial state will be user loading state. It can be anything according to your requirement. Then add a member variable user repo which will help us in getting the data from the service inside the block. Initialize the user repo variable by passing it in the userBlock constructor. Next we will write methods to listen to events and emit an appropriate state. For that, use the onEvent_emit method inside the block. Here we are listening to load users event. So on with a load users event and pass in a method load user which we are going to write next. Here the load users method will take two parameters, event and emit. This is an async method. We will start by emitting the user loading state which will tell the UI that user's data is being fetched from the server. Then we will call userRepo.getUsers to get the data. Once we have the data, we will emit another event user loaded state with the list of users. Remember the user loaded state has a member variable list of users. So the UI will receive new state with the list of users. Now the UI knows that the data fetch is complete. If there is any issue with the service, it will throw an exception. We will catch it using the try-catch block. Then inside the catch block emit user error state with the error message. This will notify the error state to the UI. I guess I have the wrong import here, let me fix it. Next we will start with the UI for displaying the list of users. For that let's create a new file called user_list_ui.dart and create a new stateless widget userListUI. UserListUI will have a required parameter list of users and the build method will implement a list view to display the user list. We will leave the item builder method of the list to empty for now. A new stateless widget will be created for each row. The separator will be a divider widget and the item count is the users.length. Now let's create another stateless widget userListRow. The parameter is a single user which is required. The build method will return a list tile. The list tile will have a title and a subtitle. The title will display user name. We will give a bold style for the name text. And the subtitle will display user email. Let's use this widget inside the user list view. Return the user list row with parameter user for each. We can get each user using users at position index. We will need two more widget for displaying user loading and user error. Let's create the user error widget. Name the class userErrorUI and it will have a parameter error message with a default value of empty string. The build method will return a center widget with a text child which is responsible for displaying the error message. The text is set with text error message, which is the parameter, and given a style of red color. The next widget is the user loading widget, which we are planning to show when the users are being fetched from the server. It will simply hold a center widget with a circular progress indicator. This widget will not have any parameters. Now we have all the widgets for our UI. Let's create the screen for showing the user list. Create a file named user_list_screen.dart. Then create a stateless widget called user_list_screen. This will be the starting and only screen in our app. Let's add a title to our screen. The build method will return a scaffold widget with an app bar having title text, user list. Before writing the body, let me make this the home screen of our app. For that, open the main.dart file and set the home property of material app to const user list screen. You can see the simulator screen is updated now. But to listen to changes in the state from user block, we need to add a block provider to our widget tree to wrap the screens that want to listen to. To keep this simple, let's add the block provider to wrap the home widget itself. The create method should return the user block. We will pass a new user repo instance as part of the user block constructor. We will also fire the load user event along with the creation. To fire the event, call the add function and pass in the event to the block instance. Then add the user list screen as child of the provider. When we fire load user event, the method inside the user block, which is load users, will be triggered. We are emitting different states inside the load users function to update the UI. This will all make sense when we have the UI ready. Let's switch to the user list screen and add the body. The body is a block builder and give it type user block and user state. This block builder will listen to the state changes in the user block, and the builder will be triggered on every state change. The builder method should return different UI based on the state. We will return a sized box.shrink by default. If the state is user loading state, then return the user loading UI. If the state is user loaded state, return the user list UI, and the user's data can be accessed from the state. The user loaded state is emitted with the user list data from the block. If the state is user list error, then return the user error UI, and the parameter message can be obtained from the state. We are emitting it in the try-catch block inside the user block. Awesome, you can see that the users list is already updated in the screen. Let me add some padding to our list. Now let me explain the flow once more. When the block provider is created, the user repo instance is passed in the constructor of the user block. Then we are firing the load user event along with the addition of block provider. The firing of load user event will trigger the load users function inside the user block. It will emit the user loading state first, which will trigger the block builder, and based on the state, we are rendering different UI. We will try to modify the URL to trigger an error in the service and see if the UI reacts to it. So now the URL is returning 404 not found error, and the UI is updated accordingly. Great! That was a real-world application of Bloc you just learned. You can extend it as per your requirement. That's all for this tutorial. Hope you learned how to implement Bloc in your application. If you find my video useful, please don't forget to like, subscribe and share. The link to the source code is available in the description. If you have any questions or thoughts about this video, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye for now.